Hi, welcome to 3.03 Get a Job 1. This is starting with slide 14. Immigration is only one issue that arises from globalization, which is the increased interaction and integration of the world's economies. Globalization is a trend that began long ago but has accelerated significantly since the beginning of the 21st century. Globalization continues to expand as the economies of the world are becoming more interconnected every day. Because of globalization, workers in the labor market have to compete not only with other workers in their hometown, city, state, or even country. In some ways, workers of the 21st century compete with other workers all over the world. At the same time, the 21st century offers jobs that never existed before, thanks in part to the trend of globalization. Employers have created new jobs in information technology, global commerce, and international relations, to name just a few fields, as a way to keep up with the speed of globalization. The trend towards globalization. People have traded with one another since before recorded history. True global trade began some 500 years ago during the European Age of Exploration. But recent advances in technology have sharply expanded international trade and the pace of globalization. While globalization has existed for a long time, the economic, political, and cultural connections that exist today are much richer and more plentiful than ever before. The current trend toward globalization has a long history. The history of globalization. Understanding the history of globalization will make it easier to understand today's global economy. Watch the slideshow to learn more. Click the blue triangle to begin. Use the arrows to advance or review sides. And you can go ahead and do that on your own. Free trade. One of the most important trends associated with globalization is the spread of free trade. In fact, globalization relies on free trade between countries without trade barriers or other government restrictions on international commerce. Free trade advocates suggest minimizing trade barriers and changing government policies that restrict international trade as a way to protect domestic businesses. The protectionist policies that interfere with free trade include the tariff, the quota system, and the use of a subsidy. A subsidy is a government payment designed to protect domestic producers. In 1947, 23 separate countries signed a free trade agreement known as the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. In 1995, GATT was replaced by the World Trade Organization, which included well over 100 member nations. The WTO encourages free global trade and helps settle trade disputes between countries. Today, over 150 countries belong to the WTO. Positive effects of free trade. Globalization has turned the entire world into one big marketplace. People from distant areas of the globe buy and sell goods and services, and they compete for the factors of production: land, labor, and capital. Those who favor free trade say that it results in the most efficient allocation of resources. Countries where labor is plentiful and cheap will take on labor-intensive production activities at a lower cost. This results in lower prices for consumers all over the world, as well as jobs for workers in the producing country. Lower costs for consumers and increased employment improve the overall quality of life for everyone, according to free trade advocates. Negative effects of free trade. On the other side, many argue that free global trade encourages exploitation of poor nations. Critics of free trade argue that companies seeking profits can simply relocate production to countries with fewer labor and environmental regulations. In effect, they send their pollution and environmental degradation to poorer countries where workers will do the work for much less. Governments try to diminish the negative effects of free trade with subsidies. For instance, agricultural subsidies are government payments that help supplement their income and influence the cost and supply of their produce. However, this makes it difficult for farmers in poorer countries to compete in the global economy. Exploitation or opportunity. When a business from a rich country builds a factory in a poor country, it may indeed be taking advantage of fewer regulations or lower labor costs. This could be seen as the exploitation of a people who will work for low wages. At the same time, however, without free trade, those workers might be unemployed. The workers receive low wages, but for many, the work provides an opportunity. As money flows into a producer's country in the form of wages, it can help raise the overall standard of living. At some point, the workers in that country will obtain enough financial security to send their children to college and to otherwise improve their lives. As they do so, the citizens of the country will become better suited to address environmental concerns and demand a greater voice in their government. In this way, the problems created by free trade have the potential to eventually solve themselves. Free trade and wages. Globalization affects workers in rich countries as well. When companies outsource jobs to a country where workers are willing to work for much less, it increases unemployment in the country where the jobs once existed. It also puts a downward pressure on wages for those workers who still have jobs. The increased supply of labor and the threat of further outsourcing push workers into accepting pay cuts or reductions in benefits. On the other hand, workers who lose their jobs this way have an incentive to get more education in order to get better jobs that haven't been or can't be outsourced. In the end, their wages might go up. Globalization and the labor market. Globalization is a seemingly irreversible, unstoppable trend. It brings advantages to some, but it places hardships on others. Answer the question to test your knowledge of the effects of globalization. Check the correct answers, then click Check Answers, and you can go ahead and do this on your own. And that takes us to the end of 3.03, Get a Job 1. Next on the list is 3.04, Get a Job 2. Have a great day, everybody.